All right, what's up, everyone? This is another episode of Balance and Breakthroughs with Will, the show where we explore what it really takes to build a meaningful life without burning it all down in the process. And I am definitely talking to myself right now. Um, I am once again your host, Will Singleton, and today's conversation is a powerful one because it sits right at the intersection of science, discipline, and personal transformation. And you guys know I'm all about that. My guest today is Dr. Tommy Rhee. Is it Ray or is it Rhee?
Rhee?
Rhee? All right, Dr. Tommy Rhee, the founder and CEO of RheeGen, the leader in regenerative medicine that's changing the way we think and heal and recover and have it all with longevity. He has worked with elite athletes, military professionals, and everyday people like you and me who just want their bodies and lives to work better and flow better. And so, once again, this is going to be a great show for anyone who is interested in a better health, in moving without, your bones being all crunchy and just smiling when you get out of bed. This is the episode for you. So here we are once again. We are ready to go, Dr. Tommy. Let's just hear about you.
Hey, Will, thank you very much. And let's talk about me. All right, here we go. Started when I was a real small baby.
When I was two, and I thought about, yeah.
When I was taking those Tonka trucks, I said, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way, right?
Right.
Well, like I was always into sports, my dad was a surgeon, medical, and I knew I was going to follow that path, but I didn't want to do surgery. I didn't want to go the invasive route, but I wanted sports. So I'm thinking sports, medicine, all that stuff, right? Be around
Mhm.
teams, 'cause, I'm in that world. But I didn't really understand why when I was growing up, my dad never gave me like medication. Even when I was getting stitches by him, he would say, "All right, you wanna get in a fight? Here you go. I'm gonna sew you up." So he would do no anesthesia sewing me up because how's that? And I just sit there like no big deal. And I get up, there's a big sweat print on the bed where I'm like laying down because I'm like just tensing. I was in pain, but. So, knowing that, I knew that I didn't want to go in the invasive medical side. Then I, discovered chiropractic, where you basically, it's all about your body's ability to heal itself if you give it its right environment, right, proper, kind of like the alignment, the free flowing of all the nerves, arteries, veins, all that stuff. If you get everything working correctly, it's amazing what your body can do. So I like that because athletes understand about, prehab, conditioning, getting ready for the game, and then you get that environment and you couple that with chiropractic and sports chiropractic, and now it blends well with me. So because of that, I went to school out in LA, and luckily I started working at UCLA. And with UCLA, I'm seeing all the sports and that type of caliber athletes. And as these kids, they go through their world of college and then they move into pros, right? They go to the Olympics or some professional team. I'm going along with them. So and during this process, I'm seeing how they recover, recover in the sense of their workouts or the injuries. And I'm learning about what they're doing and the team, what they're doing, and what the cutting edge stuff is. So as I'm moving along with them, I move out to Tampa, Florida, work with other athletes, and then I'm involved with WWE. Now I'm working with Olympic athletes again, but more so in the higher caliber. And it's all about, workouts, getting their body right, but then also recovering. So because of that, I'm still involved with that scene of seeing things from like, regenerative medicine, the prolotherapy, the PRP, the stem cell injections. So now I'm at Tampa and now I'm moving with the Buccaneers, right? So they got me there working with their athletes and I'm doing more so of extra stuff, not just chiropractic, but looking at the kind of like the complicating cases to recover them. So now I'm moving into that world, but all throughout that time, it's about how they get themselves back to normal. And then you hear about these things about stem cell therapy off season. That's what they do. They basically get their bodies back to normal because during the season, it's all about survival, surviving them for the season, game after game, or week after week. So the tough thing with stem cell injections is that there's downtime. So they can't afford these injections during the season because you do an injection, you may miss a game or two, and they don't want to miss a game. So they move into the world of pain management. I'll numb the area and continue to play because we all know about the NFL contracts. It's all about performance and being on the field, more so a guaranteed number. So with that, these guys don't do the stem cell injections. So then, as I'm developing in this kind of world, I see, all right, there is a void here. I need to develop something to kind of like fill that area where you can do the regenerative medicine stem cell therapy during the season with no downtime. And that's where the topical, what I developed, the topical stem cell cream is developed. So that will give you the ability to do it during your season, no downtime. And the most important thing, risk factors down a lot. So that's how this whole world evolved. And now here I am talking about what I do and spread the word. And hopefully we can see where I can push the future further into the world where it's back in the patient's hands and they can do their own application.
A topical stem cell treatment. That's pretty creative.
Yeah, man.
So when you talk about the environment and alignment for better health, how how disconnected has our society become with environment and alignment and our health? What have you seen that led you down this path?
I think my my like lead were always athletes. Athletes always kind of take the first kind of the pioneer movement into anything that's aggressive out there to get them back to normal. So once I moved that way and I understood what athletes are wanting and needing and to get them back to normal, it kind of like, it goes down to the next tier level, which is basically the weekend warriors, then just everyday people. But they all think the same. They all want to be active. They all want to do their best performance and have that longevity, either career-wise or their life, right? They want to extend out. And that's the big thing is that there's, especially in my age, I'm 58. I'm ready to stay like this till 90, 100. And then you have to be truthful with yourself. What is the factors that are going against me and how do I determine myself to be that person? So then I look for, all these little kind of like these secrets, right? And then when you look at stem cell therapy itself, people think it's these cells. It's not so much, it's a signal. So once you have the concept, it's signaling your existing tissue to do its job. Because
Mhm.
as we age, these signals decrease. When you get a decrease of signal, well, then your cells are not told what to do. So you need to find a way to get these signals back in your body. And then once you understand that principle, then you look at, all right, what are these signals? Can I get it from somewhere else besides stem cells?
Mhm.
Because you don't want to look at stem cells like these live cells in your body. Because when you look at live stem cells, they're like a cell with a nucleus, a DNA, and you put it in your body, you don't know what that's going to turn into. It may turn into like whatever it's designed for. If it's designed to make it into like a heart tissue and it's in your tendon, well, guess what? It's going to turn into that thing. So you got to be careful with that stuff. So again, going to what the principle is a signal. So once we understand that, now the connection is there. Now it's back in the patient's hand. Now it's a simpler application. Because I think the disconnect is that there's a lot of information out there that people are getting and they're looking for the shortcut. They're looking for, hey, I don't need to exercise. You're going to have to do something. And the secret ingredient is really going through a process. And then with that process, you become that person. You become that mindset that's positive and moving forward. And you can go through those adversities. So when I always think about like the people right now, and it's been going on for probably 100 years. Everybody wants the ability to do something without any effort. Well, you have to go through it. But if you go through the effort painless and you're able to go through that without any injury or something that inhibits you because of that kind of, issue, well, then now you're becoming that person. So I try to say you have to go through it, but if you can go through that process of, working out, developing, growing as a person, mind, body, spirit, and then have the ability to have no injuries, that's a whole bigger factor of a plus on that side versus, hey, I got injured, I got to stop. That means I stop exercising. Here comes my next step, is which is the mental side. Here comes the depression because I'm not able to work out. Now here comes the next thing, right? Now I got to take something to anti-depression, right? Now here comes that world.
Mhm.
Now it's a bad scenario where it escalates into something where now I'm at a point where I've got a habit which is bad, right? Maybe some pain med habit. So you want to think way in the future, like, hey, how can I stop that by doing this process and then working on that side of the physical side, but you know, creating an environment where I won't be in pain and I'm not getting into that world of like arthritis or injuries.
Hmm. So it really does. It's almost like an enhancement to increase our flexibility and strength as we grow, which is less invasive because it's topical. So the side effects, I'm assuming, are more I don't know what I want to say, controlled or less dramatic, I should say the side effects would be.
Yeah. So for instance, like let's say you're starting a habit of going for a walk and then you create that habit and it's one of those euphoric and then you can think and you're really out in nature and it
Hmm.
becomes as one and everything becomes clear. Now you're becoming that physical, mental, the spiritual, everything is joining as a team. Now let's say you get injured and you eliminate the exercise, you can't walk.
Hmm.
Now, what's the next thing? Now, your mental side's like, I'm not in that environment. I can't do that processing. I can't think because I'm not walking when I'm doing my creative thinking. Now, there goes that. Now, here comes spiritual. Now, the other side of it goes, I don't believe. Why did they do this to me? Why are you doing that? Why is the spirits not on my side? There goes that. So you can see how those things are very detrimental to the side of your whole body, mind, spirit. So with regenerative medicine, it allows you to keep going for that walk. So when you do feel that little ache, now you have to think, all right, I maybe tore a little bit of tissue or compromised some tissue. I need to regenerate quick. So when you regenerate that quick, you're back into that walk, you're back into the
Hmm.
mental, and you're back into the spiritual. So you're all back to normal. So that's why it's
Hmm.
very important to have everybody working all in the cylinders firing correctly.
Yeah. So what are some of the toughest cases you've had that have had really positive results because of this?
All right, so I had an NFL quarterback, that was my first real patient. This is a person that's in the NFL world, very aggressive, and he had Achilles tendonitis, grade 3. Very, very inflamed, but he had to go into the season. Because of going into the season, at camp, he can't report his injury. He can't do anything because he's in his last year contract and he wants to make sure that when he goes, renegotiates a contract, they won't throw that into him. Hey, you have that Achilles tendon, you got this problem. So that's a big thing.
Hmm.
So he knew that. So we talked about it, and he was my first test subject. Because of what we did together, he was able to finish the season, the tendon heal, no missed practices or games, and better contract. So that was the best case. So I'm thinking because of what he went through, I can take it down to the weekend warrior and the civilian and then say, hey, it works as well, as what you guys are going through because look at what he's gone through and the product is end of the season doing great. Now take a weekend warrior and apply it to like arthritis,
Hmm.
repetitive injuries, aches and pains. You have to recover, and that's how you recover fast.
Okay, okay. So what is all the treatments, the processes the same depending on the age or the athleticism of the individual, or is it more customized?
It's pretty much the same. So when you look at Regen is the topical stem cell cream. So there's in that kit has two bottles. One is an alpha and the other one's omega. One's the morning application, the alpha, and the omega is the evening application. And it's real simple. Just use it before, when you wake up in the morning before your activity starts, rub it on your skin, and then let it saturate and absorb through that tissue into the deep part, right? So then that's the alpha. And then do your normal, whatever your activity is throughout the day, whatever you're doing, just like if it's in the game or you're just walking.
Hmm.
Then at the evening before you sleep, because alpha has a component with a thermogenic, you're going to feel a little heat in there. So to neutralize that, you're going to have to neutralize it with omega, the second bottle. That right there will neutralize a heat sensation so you're able to sleep because you don't want to be cooking while you're sleeping, right?
Right.
So those two will yield as much information as the injectables out there.
Hmm. Okay, okay. I would think the heat would make you feel good. At least it does when I put on something that's hot. But
Yeah.
is that also an indication of the depth of the healing or regenerative factors that are going on? Um,
Yeah. Not so much it's not going to determine the depth, but during saturation, because there's a transdermal agent in this regen that pulls it through the skin and gets to the deep tissue. So as you continue just using it, so it's a 30-day application, and then in that 30 days, that saturation will get to the depths of where your damaged tissue's at.
That is very cool. How did you come up with that?
It was just like anything else. You always hear because of my athletes, they're they're promising, results from stem cell therapy, but there's a point where they said, "I wish I had it during the season." And then you start thinking about, well, then you think about like what are stem cells? What's all this about? That's where the confusion occurs. People think that stem cells are like these, like, they advertise you get 10 million live cells, live cells. Well, then you look at that. A live cell is pretty big in its diameter. It's big enough that it won't get through a lot of pores or type of like transdermal components, right? So then you start thinking like, all right, what's really going on here? Why does this cell, if you look at basic biology, this live cell going to turn into this target tissue or the damaged tissue? How does it do that? And in science world, in research they call it differentiate. They call it pluripotent cells that turn into these certain target tissues of like muscle, tendon, ligament. And then you start looking and go, well, how does it do that? And it doesn't really go into it. It doesn't really define it that well. It says it just does it. But then you start thinking, all right, well, how does it do it? Then you see the research behind it. Like, well, they can put it in a petri dish and you can see the two cells grow in itself, but it doesn't blend as one. So you think, all right, well, what? It doesn't turn into it. It doesn't seem like it's, you know, using one cell over the other. Then you look at the next step. It's got to be the signals. It's the signals from these stem cells are telling the existing damaged tissue to turn on. Then you start looking at this thing called EV, extracellular vesicles. These cells, these stem cells, secrete something, some information, proteins, cytokines, enzymes. It sends out information to that target tissue to say, do its job. So then when you understand that, now that's a smaller molecule. That smaller molecule says, hey, now I can take that, encapsulate that with a thing called lipid nanoparticles so I can have a longer shelf life and a better permeability through the skin. And now I put into a topical cream. Then now, when you apply the cream on there, there's an agent that will actually pull through the skin. And then with that, here comes information going through the skin to the damaged tissue. And our target tissue has the ability to what they call honing. It hones in to that damaged area because it's sending signals like a mayday, mayday, like a SOS. And this signal goes to that area and says, here I am, do your job. Now, when they get close to each other, it's called a paracrine effect. The paracrine is basically cell to cell signaling. It says, here I am, do your job. And it kind of like says, it's like a key to like a lock, turns it on. Now, there goes your information. Here comes the engine, turns on, and here comes the actual healing, the regeneration of that tissue. So that's what that's all about. So once I understood that, it goes, all right, smaller type of molecule, information signals, let's put it into a topical. Once we got that, now I'm applying it. I'm testing it out. We're doing all kinds of, R&D tests, pod study tests, and we're getting great results. And then we say, let's question this stuff. Let's go out and do some research on this stuff. Let's see who else has done this. So we see other people have done this type of world, but they don't really apply it to like deep tissue what I'm applying. They apply it to something else like the pancreas or the prostate. So I see that. So I said, okay, different target, but I'm targeting it this way. So that's how that all developed. It's just basically just trying to fill that void out there.
Okay, okay. So it's almost I don't want to say like the fountain of youth, but it's repairing you to the point where I can only say like as I've lost weight and worked out, I feel younger, I look younger, and I'm just looking at this research and this medicine as increasing those effects to where your body just and maybe it's the sign of our society because we are so dysfunctional and so unhealthy that when we do start to get healthy, it just turns back the clock, which makes it a great opportunity for this. Um, is there a type of client that is ideally suited for this? Or I guess what I should say, are there ways we can hinder the effects of this medicine or aid it with what we
Mm.
do with our life.
Okay, so think about what we're trying to do. This all starts off with the biofeedback of pain. It's all
Mm,
about pain. So when we feel pain, we know that we would just want to reduce it. So a lot of people, what they do is they stop the activity. That's how you reduce pain, right? Rest and all
hmm
that. But
hmm
for those guys that want to continue on doing that activity, and this activity could be as simple as using the mouse. When you use the mouse, you're going to start having that lateral epicondyle, that pain because you're lifting that finger up and down to use that mouse and you start getting that elbow pain. Well, people think the cause is at the elbow. No, it's really caused all the way down the other end. But the problem is that repetitive use, you get pain. So when you look at pain, you want to reduce pain. So when you ask that question, who is a eligible candidate? Pain. Anybody that has pain, you want to reduce it. Now, when you look at pain management, they look at it this way. Let's mask the pain so you don't feel it, and then you can basically keep on going. Well, you don't remember what's really going on. There is something that created the pain, so you have to go to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that you have some damaged tissue. So, in order for you to really understand about pain, you've got to get down to the cause of the pain. So, if you can take one more step, instead of going to the pain, I want to go ahead and stop the pain, and then you can stop it with some type of topical, like a cream that will give you that sensation because, oh, I don't feel the pain anymore. Well, it's like that analogy. I have a sprained ankle, and then I punch you in the eye. You're not going to remember that ankle. You go, oh man, you just dotted my eye, right? Because, hey, I
hmm
don't feel my ankle no more. Well, of course, I just maxed the pain. That's what that pain management, that cream's all about. Well, if you take one more step and say, hey, I'm going to go to the ankle, I'm going to go to the source of pain and heal that, your pain will get reduced. So that's how regen is. That's how the old topical world of stem cell therapy is all about. Go to the root of the cause to reduce the pain. So that you look at anybody that's in pain, I mean, you're talking about a large group of people.
hmm hmm
Now you're looking at going to the source, and that will really start the cascade of understanding who you are. So when I see people really understanding about their body and their mechanisms, how things start and where they're at, you've got to just go back. Just like how we have trauma in our past, we have to go back to really solve that trauma in the past to become a better person in the future. Same thing with pain. Go back to the source of the pain, solve that issue, heal that issue. So when you move forward to go do your exercises or walks, you're able to do that plus, plus, plus. So that's what's important. I always say that, when you talk about pain management and pain creams and pain anything, you're
hmm
hiding it. Don't hide
hmm
it. Face your fears. Face the truth. The truth will set you free, right? Go to the source, knock it out, clean it up with that type of sourcing of regenerative medicine.
Hmm. You know, what's amazing is, I do counseling at my private practice, and I've discovered so many people who have learned to live with their pain to the point where they don't, they just stop moving a certain way. Like I remember I was watching, listening to this one pastor talk about how people were mimicking him and just the way he walks and talks, and he walked with a limp. They thought that was just his cool little pimp walk, but he's like, I'm in pain. And he had just done it so long and he was so, popular that people were like, oh yeah, I just want to be like him. But he's like, I don't want to be like this, And it's funny when I'm doing counseling with people who have dealt with emotional pain and just learn to live with it, not realizing how it's really slowly disintegrating their life from the inside out. And what you're talking about is seriously a breakthrough. How has the medical world received this?
Tough. It's tough.
Mm,
Well, it's indifferent, meaning that some are neutralized, some are. Let me start with this. People in the stem cell world, as far as the clinicians that really do, they don't really know what's going on. They just know stem cell therapy. They have some buzzwords and they say it works. But if you look at the mechanism, they don't really understand what's going on. A lot of people don't understand what's going on because it's very complicated and it's evolving. Where you're at 2 years ago, well, that is not a fact anymore. Now it's evolved to this. So, for instance, people thought that these cells are these live cells turn into your cells. That's what the thought process. Then you come to find out, no, it doesn't turn into your cell. It doesn't, all of a sudden, that one cell from, let's say the donor side of the umbilical cord turns into your tissue. It doesn't. And it's proven that. Now you're saying, all right, what does it do? So now people used to think that way are saying, no, it's a signal. And that's why you're hearing the words like from stem cell therapy. Now it's moving to the words of like exosomes, peptides, information, signaling. You hear that cell-free biological. You can hear all this. Well, that's what this is all about. It's about the signals, information from a very bright source going into your damaged tissue that's longing and what they call it honing, right? They
Hmm.
want that information. They want some signal to say do its job. And then we need a cell to cell kind of layout, like basically lock and key to lock in and unlock that door to go ahead and say do your job. And that's that paracrine effect, paracrine cell to cell communication. Like we have communications like that, but we also have thing called endocrine system. That's basically like through the hormones world. So it starts in your brain and it goes to a target tissue like an organ and says, all right, do your job, secrete insulin, do this, do that, right? And it goes to the form of endocrine, which is a longer distance. Well, a shorter distance is the paracrine effect. That's cell to cell, right next to each other. So again, it's about the signals.
Okay. Okay. About the signals. Your book, The Future Regenerative Model, Medicine Bridges Science and Vision. Yeah. What do you wish people understood about this book or have misunderstood?
That book is great for everybody from this. I think clinicians should really look at that book to understand what it is. I mean, here's the thing about that book. It's not about like theories and like, hey, this is my feeling and this is what I think. There's science-based. There's a lot of sourcing in there. If you look at that book, there's a lot of technical and scientific like references in there that really goes into the actual like stem cell, different kind of stem cells, their mechanisms. But here's a problem. There's the other side, which is the basic person that likes to read, but don't understand the complexity when it comes to this medical terminology, scientific biology, right? So on that note, there's a second part of it, which is Jeff's journey. Jeff's journey starts off with his knee pain, and he's walking through a world of discovering stem cell, discovering different types of stem cell. So it's a great way of looking at it in two ways. There's a scientific side and the layman's version. So then you
Mm,
can, you can match up. And then if you don't understand what the science side of it, just look at the summary of what summary in the layman's version is. So you can really read the book on Jeff's journey and see how he discovered it so you don't get complicated by the actual facts of these technical words in there. So I think the big thing with that book is that it's a real factual book, but also there's a point where you can read Jeff's journey to understand what those facts are about.
mm. That sounds great. That sounds great. So just to switch gears a little bit, um, I do a lot of coaching and counseling with people with all sorts of challenges in life, and listening to you and everything you develop is just incredible. But it's funny because that's the kind of clientele I have. I have these really incredible people in my office and on the show that have these equally incredible challenges that they've had to face in life. And I just wanted to touch on your personal challenge and victory over drinking. And how did you get from there to here? And just give us a look, what was that like?
Yeah, let me tell you, I was that guy. I was a fun person when it came to that world of drinking. I guess really started like in you're a kid, you're drinking with all your friends, and then
Hmm.
you go in the military, and military, you have a set of standards in the military, but when you're off the military mode, you are the drinker, right? Navy, I'm stationed in San Diego, good times. So everything was like a relationship to good times and drinking, good times and drinking.
Hmm.
So as I move forward, you go into the world of like, corporate and all that stuff, right? So drinking is still a component of my life. Where it really started, I always thought it affected me and only me. So I didn't mind that. I have control over me. But once I started having that type of like effect on other people, once I started like hurting other people of like, I remember this one time, this is probably the one that made me decide not to drink anymore. It's one of those things that I'm in a wedding, I'm in the party, and I'm supposed to be somewhere. Well, my drinking got me somewhere else. So then I'm late. I'm like really late, and I'm like feeling, like It's just that drive of going through. This is back in California, going through the traffic jam. I knew way ahead of time, but drinking got me to a point where it's like, I didn't really care. And then once I eventually got to there, I saw the faces of people and the disappointment, and then I'm like, okay, this is now affecting other people. So it took a little bit of self-awareness and just being understanding that, all right, where am I at now and where do I want to be in the future? Is this going to continue on? Am I going to get to that goal? Am I going to get to that point where I want to with this lifestyle of drinking? So once I figured out, where I'm at, what path I have right now, I saw the fork in the road. I've got to take that harder course, like anything else, it's difficult, and it's just a mindset. Once that's good about me. Once I just determine something and I set my course, that's it. I'm vision and I'm moving that way. So once I decided to quit cold turkey, I just quit. Now, are there times I think about it? Absolutely. I think about it all the time. Every time I hear about Super Bowl parties, going out, dinners, all that stuff, it crosses my mind. But then
Mhm.
I always think future, just right away. Just don't jump in the present. Go to the future. Next day, 3 days later, a year later. Where could that take me down? You hear horror stories. Look, my drinking got me to bad things of, I have, I'll go ahead and tell you, like I have DUIs. DUIs are not fun and it
Mhm.
still haunts me to this day. It's been over maybe 20 years, it still haunts me because every time, in my profession, I have to disclose these things. So it's a reminder. But because of that, I went through classes. I mean, that's the best thing. If you surround yourself with others that are like either gone through it, worse, better, but you hear stories. And those stories really put you in the perspective like, wow, they all started where I was at. And it took them down that pathway where now you see them like, I mean, I hear stories. I mean, you probably hear stories like this too
Oh.
about like, giving their kids away for drugs or something. I
Mhm.
mean, it gets bad, and you do anything for that habit. So that's
Mhm.
they all started where I started. So that's why I had to, where am I at? What am I going to do with my life? So once I self-realized and knew that this is not the course I wanted, once you determine and you really want to do it, it's it's set in stone. I know it's tough for me
Mhm.
to say this and just say to everybody you can do it, but that's the path I took. I can't really explain to anybody else, but once I determined that, I mean, there was a point when I used to drink, my drink was Grey Goose, right?
Mhm.
Vodka, right? And I would drink that like a bottle. I would go fishing. Like everybody would drink beer. I would drink the bottle. I think it's like an eighth or something. I'd drink that and be okay. And then it's all right, let's go out tonight. It was
Mhm.
pretty bad. So then, that became like a fun night out. And, it's always like having fun and being silly and it's just a great time.
Yeah, yeah.
The next day of telling stories, you hung on that flagpole, or you were like, you did that. I said, you dropped your pants. I said, oh my gosh, story time.
Mhm.
So then once you really set yourself in that path of, cleaning up and just doing all that, you start have to understand your surroundings. Surroundings are the big thing. You have to get away from everything that may influence you down that path. So
Mhm.
I hope I didn't complicate things, but that's how that's
No,
my journey.
no. I hear a lot of stories, and the path to sobriety for everybody is different, which, I try to explain it to all my clients and the people on the show. Um, but when we say, we did it on our own, we really did it with the opportunities that we found in sobriety to help us rebuild that, to kind of level out and focus on what really matters. And I love hearing that with what your story is, because people will see you now and they'll never realize, how hard the struggle was unless they actually hear your story. Because I remember I was in a session. It was, I forget how many years ago it was, and the mother was there with her adult son, and she was berating him. You're gonna be just like those people. You're never gonna amount to anything, and just all the things she was just laying on him. And I was like, well, ma'am, I'm one of those people. And she just kind of stopped, like, oh, I forgot, Will, because you don't seem like that. I was like, you got to stop watching TV, because I'm here to tell you that we look just like you. you know, and I think that's the problem is that, there are so many success stories out there with people who have really become just legendary because I always say on my show, you don't become legendary unless you go through legendary mess. And the problem with any kind of addiction is that there's still so much shame around it, even with getting ourselves together. It's like, I tell this story and it's just because the information is so bent, to where people look at you as you are weaker than somebody else for even going to get help or for even admitting that, or you can't hold your drink. And, you're just like, oh my God, have you not looked at the world today that there are so many bad habits out there that we're dying that you're going to shame me for getting better, and so I just really applaud you on where you've come from and where you are now because you still seem like that fun guy now, Dr. Tommy.
Yeah, I'm still fun, but hey, I'm telling you right now, you want to have one of those stories like this guy, I don't know. I mean, we all have a good drinking story, right? I got a
Right,
lot of those
right.
drinking stories. I remember one like, I mean, it was a wild time. I mean, I just remember a limousine involved with it. The police were involved in it. And the worst case scenario came up true the next day, the stories, And then now you hear stories are like moving into, that, you tell a story and it travels down. The next thing you know, the story is that he's trying to commit suicide. He's on the ramp of the freeway. I said, "What? Who's this guy right here?" And then they're saying that, yeah, and then next thing they're saying it's that guy. I goes, "Who? What guy? That guy over there?" So now you're blaming somebody else, and I go, "Oh my gosh, forget
Yeah,
these stories." So yeah, you know
yeah,
how it goes,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right now, I'm creating sober, hilarious stories, and much less police contact with those.
The fun times are way ahead of me right now, so I'm
Right.
looking forward to it. Right now, I'm digging deep in all
Yeah,
this kind of
yeah.
research and paper, so I totally get that.
Yeah, yeah, and you remember everything. Be like, who was the guy? Me? That was me. Yeah, yeah, that's funny. So, looking ahead with regenerative medicine, where do you think it's going to go in the mainstream healthcare in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's going to go back to the patient's hands. It's really
Ooh,
going to
that's
be,
good.
yeah, it's going to be where you're going to have. So if you go back to that conversation we had about the information, the mechanism, and the signaling. Well, the
Hmm.
signaling is, what's important. Now there's a big push into the actual plant-based, the extracts.
Hmm.
So big stuff coming ahead of for my product, but it's going to be in the world where it's now in a shelf online where you can get this information instead of going to a clinic paying $5,000, $10,000 for an injection. Now it's going to be in your hands for less than $100. It's going to give you the same ability, and the most important thing, it's going to help you heal faster to reduce the pain. So I see the future going into the patient's hand where they can obtain it much quicker without all that kind of, that levels of expenses and people making money off you. Now it's going right to you where it's at a
Hmm.
cost so much affordable.
That would be wonderful. And I'm maybe it's just my wishful thinking, but I think I'm seeing a shift in our society where we are becoming more health conscious, looking to create cures instead of treating symptoms. I have another guest coming on to talk about hyperbaric oxygen treatment. And he's talking about stems and the oxygenation of the bloodstream and everything that's above my pay grade. But I actually went and did a sample tour, and so you'll get to see me in one of the pods, and it was an interesting experience. But I'm seeing this new wave of we really want to get better and not just feel better,
Mhm.
and I'm loving that.
Yeah. What's funny is that, I'm still in practice. So I've got three chambers in my office, right?
Ah, okay.
So it helps me. But let me tell you something. There's a great research that came out. I totally forgot the sourcing, but if you do 60 dives in a year, right? Maybe like one and a
Hmm.
half weeks per week for that year period. There's like an anti-aging type of biohack in there where it's all about like things called telomeres. Our telomeres are what dictates our replication, right? So we want the ability to have our cells regenerate. And when you regenerate, you need that information, right, to make those telomeres grow. Well, in hyperbaric chamber, there is studies that shows the telomeres grow longer. When you grow
Mm-hmm.
longer, now you're able to do that replication and keep those cells healthy. Well, just like that, stem cell, its information,
Mm-hmm.
that signal telomerized, the enzyme increases telomeres. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all about that. So yeah, I know about the hyperbaric and I know
Mm-hmm.
about all this other stuff, and it's all awesome.
Yeah.
And the neat thing about right now where we're sitting, I think we're getting educated. People are looking at these shows and they understand that, hey, there is an idea and they do research. Google it,
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT. You know, question me, question. I love when patients say, hey, I ChatGPT goes, perfect. I want you to, I'll bring it up right in front of us so
Mm-hmm.
they can
Mm-hmm.
understand. It's all about educating people. If
Yeah.
you give them enough information, they will understand what to do. It's good to have a doctor start the process. What do you have? What's a diagnosis? And from there, you move forward until you get to the first step, right? You get the first step is like, what do you have? What tissues compromised? And then work in the investigative reporting of like these podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
You're Googling and you're chat GPTing, and then you find out, well, this thing I have, how do I repair it? How do I do treatment? And what new cutting edge stuff is out there for me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because like what like you were saying with Googling it. Oh, by the way, you hooked half my audience when you said anti-aging. I have a friend who's like, what did he say? But I see a new interest in actually understanding what doctors are giving us now. And I'm loving that because, even with a lot of people I talk to, they're actually asking questions of their physician or their specialist because they really want to understand. And they're not just taking the treatment that they give them. We're working as co-partners. Like, this is my body. You're the expert, but this is my body, and I need to understand what you're doing to my body. And and it's interesting because some of the other doctors I talk to, good and bad, uh, some really appreciate the interest. The others are like, they should just trust me. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, bro, I don't know if that's gonna work anymore.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing is that if you go to get your exam and you have high cholesterol or hypertension or diabetes, they'll give you the medication, and the last thing they say is, go exercise, watch your diet. Well, believe it or not, they should start with that. Start with that, and then once you get that, if your body isn't a perfect, I know, like the world, evolving around
Hmm.
you can combat a lot of things. And then the neat thing is that, I hate to say it, but people want the shortcut. They want that pill. They want to trust doctor. If you can really like tune into these conversations and say, hey, a walk, a nice walk, you do a couple of 20-minute walks a day, that would knock out a lot of that stuff you're dealing with hypertension and all that other
Hmm.
stuff. But
Hmm.
it's the hard part is that the time consumption and people, they love their TV shows and their snacks. Listen to this podcast when you're going for a walk.
Hmm.
Listen, I mean, these podcasts are even better when you're doing an activity,
Yeah.
working around the yard.
Hmm.
It's like you're like kind of like eavesdropping on the conversation while you're working. Ooh, what are the neighbors saying? What are the neighbors saying
Hmm.
like that?
Yeah, environment and alignment, and I talk a lot about just the physical health with nutrition and exercise because I used to be almost 400 pounds and I lost it without any surgeries, because I had to have the skin removal because I had so much loose skin. But every doctor I went to, he's like, "Did you get the band? Did you get the gastro?" And I was like, "No, I didn't do any of that, probably because I couldn't afford it." But I just did it through working out, and it was an uphill battle the whole time, but I stayed with it, and I'm much healthier, because of that. And I've been more resistant to getting sick and to stress. And when I go to jobs and when I do speaking, I teach people how to be stress resilient, and that's through your environment and your alignment. What are you doing to your body to align it with success instead of stress? And people are like, what? Because we live off stress, which is probably the anti-stem cell
Yeah.
flagellate.
Well, let me tell you something, man. You 400 pounds? You got to be what?
I
You're
was
doing awesome, man.
385 at one time. Yeah, yeah.
That by itself is huge. think about the amount of energy it took you to actually sustain 400 pounds and then the stress you put onto every part of your
Oh
body.
yeah, I know. I know.
Holy, the funny thing is I hear about it and I listen to, but to actually like, be involved with it, like in an experiential, no, everything is like a theory in my head. Just,
hmm
I see proof right in front of me. It's awesome, man.
Yeah, I used to do a class with Heidi Hillu, who used to own a gym I went to for people just getting into the gym. I call it the fat people's class, but we would just tell jokes. But I said, I celebrated every victory, and it was funny because the skinny trainers didn't understand what I was talking about. And I said, hey, I stopped having to use baby powder between my thighs, and everybody was giving me high fives and amens, and the skinny instructors were like, what is baby powder between your thighs for? I said,
No,
but yeah,
that's what I mean. Like I don't like I hear about it, but you don't really experience because I know I can only imagine. I mean, your prep just to get up in the morning and be outside
yeah,
is a longer process than right now. So it's like
hmm
I totally get that. I mean, I hear about it and seen patients that come in here
hmm
and then I know what they're going through on their physical side, but just the actual like
yeah,
the preparing the days, events,
hmm
that's foreign to me.
yeah. I will be soon off of my blood pressure and my diabetes medicine, probably this time next year. And I remember talking to my doctor because I was losing. And I remember saying, hey, do you think I can ever get off this medicine? And she was like, well, a lot of people stand it for the rest of their life. I said, I didn't ask that. I said, if I continue to lose weight, do you think I'll have a real good shot of getting off my medicine? And so finally, because I'm stubborn, she just relented and she said, I guess we'll see. And I'm like, all right, well, and I was like, all right, woman, I guess we will. And when I came in about 4 months later, it was hilarious. She was so excited. She was more excited than I was because I was hard on myself. But she said, "You've lost this much weight and blah blah blah. You're no longer obese." But I was still fat. I said, "So I'm just fat now. I'm not obese." And I was like, "Okay, we'll take the win." And she just laughed. That's not what I meant. I said, "No, it's cool. It's cool. We're gonna keep working out." But you're right. The amount of energy, and I think it just goes on what we're talking about, how we get used to being sick, you know, and the industry feeds off that. So when we have, I don't want to call it cures, but things that can create a cure, we can develop the cure within our body if we add the right things into our life, like the stem cell, regenerative process. I mean, that can put us in such a better environment to be more successful. And I think that's the process, of becoming more and more successful in our body, in our relationships, in all of our goals. But we can't do it without our vehicle being right.
Yeah. Remember, my age, we look at the future, right? We look
hmm
at 70, 80. We want to be active. We want that ability to like retire and travel around the world
Yeah.
without that thought that goes, oh, I don't think I can walk that path. I don't think I can go across the country because of my, whatever.
hmm
That's what I'm thinking. Like, I've got to figure out something for me. And then
Yeah.
because I'm discovering, I'm going to spread it out there. So
hmm
nothing's worse than being retired, financially just set, and then you're not
Yeah.
able to do anything.
hmm
So you
hmm
have to combat that by finding
Yeah.
these little secrets out there. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm right there with you with the age, I'm 56.
Damn, good for you, man. That's tough. Good job, man.
I want to keep being able to move, and that's why I love having people like you on the show to really increase the quality of our life, with what we do with our life. So, one last question. If you could give yourself one piece of advice to your younger self about health, business, or life, what would it be?
Listen more.
Mm,
Listen more and then avoid your own problems.
okay.
You, c- I could have avoided 20 years of my own realization and learning habits if I would have listened to people.
Mm, mm,
Sometimes I had that personality. I mean, be honest with you, I'm a personality that I would rather have my own mistakes and learn from it than been taught that. But if I got there and I said, just follow these people, just listen to them, stop trying to reinvent the wheel, go with this
hmm
process, and then push further. I always had that drive. I always had that I was very good at starting businesses and moving. It's the complexity of running a business. Starting a
Hmm.
business is not hard. It's running a business to success. And that's where a lot of problems come up, you know. And if I just were to listen to more people and just took their advice, I would avoid that. So, going back, I say, pay attention more and listen and
Yeah.
learn from
Yeah.
example instead of like learning from
Hmm.
your own mistakes.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that would be advice for everybody to follow. I often say, I'm extremely hard-headed, as my mom would say, and I've definitely learned from my own lessons, but man, the damage it took to get there and to learn that information was costly.
But believe it or not, being hard-headed is very good too, because once you set your mind to something, positive or negative, you're gonna get
Hmm.
it. So
Hmm.
it's almost like a blessing and a curse. So it's almost like
Mm.
like for instance, like that's my thing is I can do anything. If I put my head down, I can do it. But that opens up to a lot of things like, oh, I can do this. With my ADHD, I think I'm like a squirrel. I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. I've got to stop and squeeze it down and be
Mm.
focused on one thing and finish that instead of looking at everything like, let's start this project. So I've got like 8 projects on top of RheeGen, on top of my business, on top of my books. I've got other things. And then I'm saying, no more, squeeze it down, focus, finished, move
Right.
on to the next one.
Right.
So that's my 2026 thing. It's just like, hey, stop acting like you can do everything. Just act like you can just finish one thing and then go on.
Man, man, that's right. That's right. Focus. It's almost like a hyper focus on what the priorities are, so we can get to the rest. I would try to do everything and and end up doing nothing and just be spinning my wheels the whole time, all with the appearance of success. But yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate those words. And man, thank you for being on the show today. I
Well,
really, really
man,
appreciate it.
this is good, man. This is a good conversation, man. These are the things I
Yeah.
look forward to. Just good conversations.
Yeah. So today's episode of Balance and Breakthrough, Dr. Tommy Rhee is a reminder of real transformation from the inside out. It's not just about being physical, it's mental and emotional also, where we are really creating the environment and the alignment for us to be the absolute best version of who we're meant to be. So if this episode resonates with anybody on here, or someone who you should share this with, please do like, share, and subscribe. And where can people find you, Tommy?
You can go ahead on my website, which is RheeGen, RheeGen.com, and you can learn about topical stem cell. But then there's an info button there. Click on that thing, ask me a question. You can just Google my name, of course, and my book, of course, on Amazon, The Future of Regenerative Medicine. You can look for that, and then voila, there you go.
All right, voila. Yeah, I encourage everybody to look him up. This is an incredible episode, especially if you want to live longer, better, faster, stronger. Please look him up. He's on Instagram and LinkedIn. Are you on Twitter?
Um, I think so. One of those, I'm not a social media guy. You may see one post every 3 months. Like, oh, look at that! I just had that microwavable meal. No, no, no,
You
no,
should
no.
probably talk to my agent. She would help you with that.
I need some help. Trust me. Hey, it takes a village right now. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
hey, I'm telling you, and Katarina Martin has really just pulled me along to be successful, and I wouldn't be anywhere without her. So
Hey, if she was a stem cell, I'm a damaged tissue, and I'm honing right there. So hopefully, she will send me the right signals here.
I'll let her know that. I'll let her
All right,
know
thank you, man.
that. All right, man. As always, anybody, stay tuned. We will have another episode next week, and thank you guys for being on the show tonight. Thank you, Dr. Tommy.